the Medium. And there's a few bits of news here. So the Medium, which was unfortunately for them due to come out on the 10th of December, which I imagine being that team, 10th of December, this is when the game's like no other game's coming out on the 10th of December. Sweet. We've got like a little window for this horror game, which also, you kind of need to have a bit of space for these horror games, like you've even seen it with Resident Evil, and they're starting to release them in like February, just so they get out of the window of other games. And then the biggest game of the year, the number one game of the year, Cyberpunk 2077, randomly issues another delay and lands on the 10th of December. And this poor game is just like, are you kidding me? Because I think if you're launching on the 10th of December, that's almost the last day you can launch for the Christmas window, essentially. And yeah, they've announced that they're delaying the game. Now, whether they say they're delaying it because of COVID or whatever, I don't really buy any of that. I just look at this as...
But they did say the current schedule of other titles, so they at least owned up to that. They didn't completely ignore it.
Sure. But yeah, they're delaying it and they're pushing it out to January 28th. So for Australia, just after Australia Day. So that's the Thursday. Yeah, so it's a bit of a shame because like this was one of the games that, was a exclusive experience on Xbox Series, and I could actually have seen it had been like a bit of a cult hit potentially, like if it lands well, because always these horror games are like that. So yeah, it's a real shame. I like, just from moving it out, like, do you think that's the right decision, or?
I think getting the hell away from Cyberpunk is a very wise decision. It's obviously going to... We'll never know exactly how well it would have sold versus, when it does come out, but like, just imagine, like, nobody is going to be talking about this game when it hits December the 10th. Nobody. They had to get out of the way of this. They had to.
But maybe no one's going to be talking about it in January 28th either.
But yeah, that's very true. But the other thing is, it also gives them more time to fine tune it. So I think, it'll probably launch as a better product for it, which will mean that, which means we'll probably get better reviews, hopefully get more buzz. I mean, the Bloober Team have a good history. Laser Fear is very popular and stuff. So I think this will end up being a game that will probably live or die on how well it goes on Twitch and YouTube and stuff, because horror games always, people love watching people's reactions to games. So honestly, this game actually does look pretty cool. It's just, we've talked about horror games before, they're just not my jam. They have to, even something like Eternal Darkness, on the GameCube, that was definitely not a super scary game, but still I liked its gameplay. But if it wasn't for the whole Lovecraftian stuff, the horror's just not my jam. So
yeah, and I mean, this game does look pretty damn scary, right? And I'm still torn a bit about whether they should have moved it or not. It sounds like they weren't able to bring it forward, because that would have been one option. And I do feel like you probably can't push it out any further than December 10. And you're going to be in that massive wake that Cyberpunk's going to have, right? Like, it's not like Cyberpunk, it's going to release and then no one's going to talk about it. I feel like the whole month of December is just going to be Cyberpunk, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be like, hey, when people get a Series X or a PS5 for Christmas, it's going to get another bump up because Cyberpunk's just going to be a game that people want to play on the new consoles. And it's going to be the definitive way to play it, let's be real. So, yeah, like, I guess logically it does make sense, and you couldn't bring it forward. It would have been great if they could have brought it forward. So like I think that's the way that I would have tried to do it, but
so you mentioned,
I don't know how close they were.
So you mentioned it's going to come out just after Australia Day, so that means Australians are going to really enjoy this game.
Yeah, well, maybe. So it got submitted to our classification board, and it got rejected instantly. Now, what I understand from that, and just reaching out to some industry insiders on it, it seems like they probably have made a mistake in submitting the form itself. So it's not necessarily that the game or the content of the game, because, Australia has unfortunately and infamously a very rich history of refusing games, not, kind of basically viewing games as for kids. So anything mature, they either refuse classification or require game developers and publishers to significantly censor games to ridiculous points.
So
Very, very much funny. What was it? Was it South Park that they did a massive send up in the physical game, like in the actual game itself?
so good, I love it.
Which is one of the greatest things ever. You check it out on YouTube. Just search for like Australian government censorship, South Park. They've put it in the game itself, describing what you're missing out, given that you're playing it in Australia. So this game, they've already said that they're resubmitting it. But it is a scary game, so I'm not sure, if games would get banned these days because of that. But it is a, mature game in the States as well.
Yeah, so ever since they introduced the 18 rating, which was, I remember back in uni, I even did I even did like a talk on that stuff because that's how ridiculous it was getting. Now, generally, the reason they might refuse classification is for generally two reasons. One is depiction of drug use, and
no, it's not drug use. It's the drug use that gives you benefits.
Yeah.
So you can use drugs, and if it means you're weaker, it's okay. But if you use drugs in Australia in a game and you get stronger or more like quicker or whatever, it's not okay.
And the other reason, I'm not talking also about games that are obviously like just have content that's just ridiculously like like something like I forget the name of it, that game where you went up as a mass murderer shooting everyone, like games like that. I'm not talking about stuff that are obvious.
Like Postal?
No, it wasn't Postal. It was something else.
Oh, okay.
And it was and sexual violence, so anything to do with rape and stuff like that.
That's true.
That's why. Oh my god, I can't remember any names of the games.
But even those kind of games are starting to get banned on Steam.
Anyway, So, but interestingly enough, a game that I really like, Risen. Risen was refused classification in Australia. So Risen is an RPG by Piranha Bytes. So I'm a big fan of them. Super Eurojank. They're almost like the connoisseurs of Eurojank. And the reason why Risen was refused classification is because there's one mission in the game where you're in like it's like a monastery sorts, but it's kind of like part of a guild quest line or something. And you have to. There's these like it's like their version of weed, basically, right? So it's like a reed, reed that's in the water, but they turn it into like something you can smoke. And there's a thing where you actually have to pass that out as kind of like you're acting as like a bit of a dealer in the monastery to then, continue a quest line, and it got banned because of that quest. It's a shame because like it was, and the way it was, they definitely didn't depict anything about negative or positive there. So it was also a small publisher and developer, so they probably just didn't have, it wasn't worth it to fight it in Australia at the time. So,
so it never got released, or?
Oh yeah, I had to import it from the UK. So.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
I don't know if it's since been released and available, let's say, on Steam and stuff like that. But for the 360, it never got officially released in Australia. But because it was a PAL region game, you could just get it from the UK. It's fine. It's not like I was going to stop by the border police over importing Risen. So,
from what I understand, also when you're submitting these things, just listening to developers talk about it, especially indie ones, it's like you basically need to describe all the things that you believe may trigger them to, give it certain ratings, and it's kind of up to you how you frame it as well. So I do wonder, with especially the European developers, when they're submitting these things, whether they're just very like casual about it and not reading the markets, like in terms of whether they ban things or not. Sort of like, hey, he turns this into, some kind of drug and it gets more powerful or not powerful or whatever. And then they just read that and go, wow, this is a clear breach of what we're doing. Whether maybe they could have written it in such a way that they could kind of like get around it,
Because you
supposedly... Yeah, go on.
No, I was just going to say, because you look at that quest and then you compare that to GTA Chinatown Wars and Nintendo DS, where there are missions where you're actually delivering cocaine or heroin. I can't remember which one it is. Like, it is 100% the same like concept. It's just one is obviously a much bigger, it has much bigger weight behind it. And people, as you said, probably know how to submit this stuff in a way that's
exactly
get it.
Exactly. It's the art of framing these things in a way that obfuscates them. So, and it's also for them to then turn around and go, well, they said you're delivering a package, and then they said, well, the prior mission, the package is drugs, so they forgot to mention that's what you're delivering in that one. So, yeah, no, it's interesting. It will be interesting if this game gets refused, because there's easy ways to get around getting it, and I think it will make it more attractive for people in general if it gets banned, because they'll probably have the angle that, oh, it's so scary that it's got banned in Australia. Well, yeah, let's get into some business news.